listeners. How is the day going over there? Hope you are fine. 2 weeks ago I was here before my colleague was here last week where he commenced lessons on English Concord. Today I will take it from where she stopped last week. She was able to put explanation and analysis to 10 of the rules I highlighted for this session of grammar class. And I want to say it very importantly this morning that grammar is very important and very necessary, highly necessary to speakers of English language, especially some of us that are not, that do not have, especially some of us that do not have English language as a first language. We need to master the use of the language effectively. Some of our teachers will say to possess a second language is to possess another language is to have a second soul. And when we put an addendum that having a second soul is not enough than as using it proficiently. And it is in that regard that the class commences this moment. And good morning once again, dear listeners, students at home, and everyone who listens to Oxygen FM. My name is ADEBIYI. I prefer to be called Yusuf for short. We want to look at some of these rules here today. I want to stress that some of the things we want to do today are student-centered. And when I say student-centered, I mean to say that they are particularly designed for students who will be writing high school examination, WAEC, NECO, JAM, post-JAM examinations, or whatever. However, or let me say, as a matter of importance, anyone who dares or who wishes to use the language proficiently needs to be part of this session this morning. Let me take it from where she stopped last week. She stopped at rule 11. What does the rule say here? She was able to explain 1 to 10, and let me take it from 11 here. 11 says most and much concord is a rule of most and much concord. Most and much. How do we use most and much? Sorry. How do we use most and much in English language? Many speakers of English have difficulty in this expression, in these two words that are used separately. We must identify that two of them are used in different grammatical categories. One is used for countable nouns and one is used for uncountable nouns, and one can be used for both countable and uncountable nouns. When we say countable nouns, uncountable nouns are nouns that the native speakers of English believe they are not countable or they do not count, because Nigerians believe that items that we cannot count alone are things that are uncountable. Take for instance like water, like margarine, like butter, like sand, like rice, like fuel, foil and meat, etc. There are some other words, or there are other words that are uncountable too. Take for instance equipment, furniture, news, information, baggage, luggage, software, hardware, and more examples that we have in English language. So here today, rule 11, it says that most and much concord. Most with uncountable noun. The rule reads most with uncountable noun takes singular verb. Most with countable noun takes plural verb. What this is simply trying to say, let me say it in a very clear understanding. What that says simply is that in English language, most can be used in for both countable and uncountable. And what makes it usable for either countable or uncountable is the kind of noun that comes after its usage. And let me give example to buttress the explanation I just gave now. I said most is used for both countable and uncountable nouns. And it is the noun that comes after the use of most that tells us if the verb that it will take will be singular or plural. And I know a foundational knowledge in grammar, must have informed us that uncountable nouns oftentimes, will take singular verbs or partitives. We are going to explain partitives, I think, when we get to rule 16 or 17. God gives us time today. So look at this example I have here. We have most of the food has finished. Most of the food has finished. Most of the food has finished. And example 2, we have most of the students were late. Most of the students were late. Most of the students were late. Let us give explanation to the two sentences I just read out now. The first one, the noun that comes or that is present in that expression is food, and you all agree with me that food is an uncountable noun, is a mass noun. We don't say foods. I will tell a situation where we can put us into conditions of mass nouns by the time I finish this explanation on this session. So we all know that food is uncountable. So when you say most of the food is the noun that makes the sentence become comprehensive or explanatory enough. So it will therefore agree with a singular verb before singular verb, and that is has. In that expression, we have verb phrase there. That's has finished. But our concern and our concentration is on the use of the word has. And the second example I cited is most of the students were late. Most of the students were late. You will see that the student that I read out now is in plural. It has an s in front of it. It means that it's a countable noun because it has an addition of plural. The addition of the word s. It means that noun is a countable noun, is a noun that can be put or that can be considered into the plural form. Therefore, it will take a plural verb. It therefore means that we can say most of the students were late, and we can say most of this food has finished. We can also say most of the water is spoiled or has spoiled. You can know. I hope you know that in some verbal situations we can use his in place of has. Most of the food has spoiled. Most of the food is spoiled. Both correct. Someone will also ask a question: why can't we use much? Because much is better known to be to be used for uncountable nouns. We can say much. You can say much of the food has finished. To both expressions is or are correct. In English language, you can use are and his for both. I think one is more British, one is British, and the other is American. Consistency is what matters when we are considering the varieties of English in English class. However, it has an exception. In grammar class, our teachers always tell us that in whatever or in areas of language learning, there are things that we say it works this way. When we get to another perspective or another level, it won't go that way. That's why we don't say or we don't make claim. A good teacher of English does not make complete claim to certain expressions. We give room for exceptions. The exception is that when more than okay, thank you. Rule 12. More than concord. That's more than concord. That is, the more than is when we have here. And how do we use more than? The rule says that the number after more than decides the verb. Let me tell you what happens in this expression. There is what we call an anecdote in language studies. We have it in literature too. There are expressions, and there's what we call parentheses too. There are expressions that when you have them, we do not give consideration to what comes after them. What is of highest concern to us is the elements that constitute the use of the language itself or the use of the expression itself. We have more than concord. How do we use more than? Someone will, one may be surprised that when we say more than, it directly interprets that an expression simply denote that one plus many other things are involved here. However, in English, I mentioned the other time I came here that there is no English like all other languages of the world are not things of I think, or let me say just say abstract hypothesis that I think it should be this way, I think it should be used this. No, there are ways to using these languages that we must master them. More than concord, it's reads that when more than when more than when more than the number after more than decides the verb. Look at the sentences we have on the board. We have more than one student is absent. More than two students are absent. The explanation we have for this is this. You would see that the student we have on the screen or in our explanation is singular. The singularity of the student tells us that the verb that will come will be singular. If you look at the second sentence, you would see that more than two students are absent. The plurality of the second sentence tells us, and you will see that the student is in plural, the plurality of the subject in that expression tells us that more than a person is being talked or being spoken about. Do not take consideration into more than that we have there. Let me tell you literally what this simply means is that one student is absent, two students are absent. Clip away that more than of a thing. They are just, I choose to call them, language anecdotes, things that, they are used just as introductory means to drive home the speaker's or the writer's point. It has an exception though, and what's the exception is that when more than modifies the quantity, not the subject. Look at the examples we presented here. All the modifications are on the subject. And what are the subject? They are the students, and they are students in singular position and students in plural position. So the exception now here says when more than modifies a quantity, not the subject, which can be anywhere in the sentence, the verb agrees with the actual subject and noun. And look at this example. More than 50% of the students are here. More than 50% of the water is polluted. Here is still giving credence to the first thing we mentioned in the case of countable and uncountable nouns. Here you can see the student mentioned in the exception is in plural and is a countable noun. You can see the water mentioned in the other example is a good example of an uncountable noun. So quantity is described here, not the subject and not the noun. Rule number 13. If you look at rule number 13, it says each and one concord. That is, how do we use each and how do we use one of? How do we use each and how do we use one of? It has, a strict idea. We have to be, to be strict in, complete adherence to this particular use of, grammar. You have these examples: each and one of, take singular noun and singular verb. Each and one of is a phrase, and that's what we call partitives in English language. Partitives, or we call them partitives, we call them what other thing we call quantifiers. Thank you. But I love to call them partitives. So each and one of takes singular verb, singular noun, and singular verb. Look at the sentence we have on the board. We have each boy has a textbook. Each boy has a textbook. One of the girls was chosen. Each boy has a textbook. It means that a boy has a textbook. Each is used for one person. Each is used for one person. It means that a boy has a textbook. And if you look at the second sentence, one of the girls was chosen. Many girls were present, out of which one was chosen or was taken. It means that just one is what is being referenced here. Look, puts aside concentration from the use of plural noun there. I mean plural girls or plural noun there. It's of no matter, or it's not of no importance to the sentence. What we are looking into in that sentence is one girl, one. It is pronounced one, like WONE, one. So one girl was chosen. So when we have one of, each of, let me read this out. When we have one of, each of, the rule says that the subject or the noun that will come thereafter must be in plural and must be followed by a singular verb. The subject that will come thereafter must be in plural and must be followed by a singular verb. So that's example there. However, it has an exception that speakers hardly take cognizance of. And what's that? When each comes after a plural subject, the verb agrees with the plural subject. Let me read that again. When each comes after a plural subject, the verb agrees with the plural subject. Look at the sentence I want to read out now. We have the children each were given a note. The teachers each were given a copy. Look at how I started the sentence. I said, examine the sentences I just read now. We have the children. Of course, children is the plural form of child. And we have the teachers. Of course, definitely the plural form of teacher. The plural form of teacher is teachers. And the rule says that when each comes after a plural subject, the verb agrees with the plural. And look at this sentence. The children each has come after the plural subject, which is the children. The two teachers each has come after the subject, which is the teachers. Therefore, the plural condition or the verbal condition of such a sentence or such sentences will change into plural form. The teacher each were given a note. The children each were given a copy. That's the exception there. 14 is the rule of one of the discourses in the universal grammar in English language. People who have knowledge in language and linguistics, will understand what we call universal grammar. Universal grammar, these are expressions that need special consideration. We call them, special expressions, or we call them, special concord, because they literally do not appeal to people's common sense. Look at many are concord. When we use many are concord, many a. Many a takes singular verb and singular noun. When many a is used to begin a sentence, the subject that will come after it must be in singular, and the verb that will follow the subject must also be in singular. This is a very common, exercise that WAEC and NECO usually, test almost every year. As an examiner, I'm telling you, this question is, was also part of the question set for this year, WAEC and NECO examinations. Both bodies examined this question this year. So many a student has passed the examination. Many a time was I warned. Many a time was I warned, or many a time I was warned. Many a time was I warned. Many a student has passed this examination. Simple analysis and a kind of revision to this is just that when we have many used to qualify the subject in sentence, do note that the subject will be in singular and the verb will be in singular. Do not take consideration into the use of many are. Many does not have anything to do with the sentence. What that simply means, or let me say what the grammar is simply saying, is that a student has passed this examination. A time was I warned. It has an exception that I want us to take a look into, and the exception is this: many are if it is used without a, the subject and the verb are in plural. If the article, the indefinite article, is removed from the examples I cited, the subject will be plural and the verb will be plural too. And let me use the sentences I just read out to stress or to strengthen the reversal form or the exception form it has. We can say many students have passed this examination. Many times we were warned. Many times we were warned. You can say many times I was warned too. It's correct in that context. You can say many candidates attended or attend. Many candidates attended the seminar. Many students show up for the party. The use of either or, neither nor, either or, neither nor. There's what called word boundary in English language, and let me quickly explain that, why I pronounce either or together. When the rhotic sound is the real sound. When it ends a word, or the lateral sound too, the lead sound too. When it ends a word, the word that follows it, if it begins with a vowel, it is correct and appropriate to pronounce the lateral or the rhotic sound with the word that follows. So either or, we can say father-in-law, mother-in-law. For instance. So when we have when we have these words come in contact like that, we pronounce them together. That's what we call word boundary in English phonetics. So here we have either or and neither nor. How do we use them? There are 2 or 3 ways of using them in English language. One is for proximity, one is for subject correlations. Proximity and subject correlations. I'm going to explain both of them in this session. This kind of correlation is used in what we call correlative conjunctions, when 2 subjects or 2 nouns are being correlated either to mean this or this. One of them is being referred to, not the entire 2 or all of them. And the meaning that the verb agrees with the noun closest to it. That's where I want to start from, and that's what we call the law of proximity. The law of proximity states that when we are correlating 2 subjects, the verb that will agree with the subject is determined by the subject that comes last in the sentence. If the subject that comes last in the sentence in the correlation is plural, the verb is going to be plural. If the subject that comes last in the sentence is singular, the verb is going to be singular. An example we have here, we have either. We can pronounce either as either or either. Either Tolu or his sisters are coming. Either Tolu or his sisters are coming. The first subject in that sentence is Tolu. The second subject in that sentence is Tolu's sisters, more than one person's. Therefore, are is the correct verb because the sisters is the verb that is next or that is closer to the verb. That's what we call law of verbal proximity. And if you look at the second example cited here, we have neither the teacher nor the student were ready. Neither the teacher nor the student were ready. The student in the plural form is the subject that is next or closer to the verb. It therefore, the verb, the number of the subject influences the verb that will come after. That is on law of proximity. When you say something is proximity, it means something that is close, near, that has little or no nexus of connection. The other way to see correlative conjunction is what we'll have subject clusters. Let me call it that way, subject clusters. When we have either or, neither nor, join subject together, we should take cognizance of the position of the subject. Look at this example I want to read out now. Let me use the first example. If we say, for instance, that either Tolu or Ayo will be he's coming, because we are referring or we are correlating 2 singular subjects in that expression. 2 singular subjects in that expression. If we say also neither the teacher nor the student was ready, because we are talking about a teacher and we are talking about a student. 2 separate persons, not 1 versus 2 or 1 versus more or more versus 1 or more examples like that. And the same thing applies to the position where we have it or the subject in plural. Either the students or the teachers are expected. Rule 16. 16 is what we call double title concord. Double title concord. And what does that mean? There are nouns or nominals that are capable of describing another noun. So the second noun that comes after description, after the first noun, we call it descriptive nominals. We call it descriptive nominals. That is the noun that functions in the position of description. More of adjective, but we don't categorically call it adjective. It functions as it describes the other noun. So look at this: two titles referring to one person take singular verb, and there is a caveat here that we need to note here. Two people take plural verb. When we have two subjects, we have two titles referring to the same person, the verb will be singular. When we have two subjects, two titles referring to different persons, the verb will be plural. And how do we know that the second title is referring to the first title? It's just the exclusion of the article D, definite article D. When we use article D, definite article D, it means that two things are being described separately. Look at the example we have here. The owner and manager is here. The owner and manager is here. The owner is the same person as the manager, and the manager is the same person as the owner. How do we know that they are both? It is the exclusion or the removal of article D before the manager. If I had, read the owner and the manager are here, meaning that the owner is another person entirely from the manager, and the manager is another person entirely from the owner. Just take close cognizance into how language persons use the definite article there. We call it nominal descriptive. So we call it double title concord too, and it has several names too. It's one of those discourses in universal grammar of the English language. Categorization concord. Categorization concord is usually described as what we call general concord in modern English classes. I won't say general concord or category. It means that the word more often which are adjectives tell us that a group of persons are involved in this description, or a group of people, a group of character, a group of set, different persons are involved in this character. When we say that we categorize or we bring into sum all this person to have this name, we say that we call them categorization concord. And look at the example we have here. We have the poor, the rich, the gifted refer to a group of people and take plural verbs. The needy, the childless, the barren, the scholar, the more and more examples like that. So we have example here. The poor need our help. The poor need our help. Here we literally saying that everyone, a lot of people that are poor, we need to help them. So it will not be needs. It will take a plural verb. And the second example we have there, we have the elderly. The elderly need more care. The elderly need more care. The elderly need more care. So the use of poor in that sentence and the use of elderly, tells us that a group of people or some people have been categorized to be poor. Some people have been categorized to be what? To be elder. Rule number 18. We don't have it. Pronouns are words that are used to stop the continuous repetition of nouns. Not pronouns are words that are used instead of nouns. Because if we all stick to that definition of pronoun, it means that when we make expression, we begin to ask, or we need to ask the condition or the person involved in the action. If I say, for instance, he came here this morning, he greeted everyone, he shared all, he gave us some gift, he does this, he does this, he does that, he does that. We may need to ask question, who is this person? And if I say Mr. Ade came here, he does this, he gave us this, he greeted everyone, Mr. Ade, and I know I keep on repeating Mr. Ade, Mr. Ade. The sentence becomes what we call redundancy. The sentence becomes redundant. So in order to avoid boredom or language redundancy, so we need to use pronoun. So that's why it is more correct in this time to say pronouns are words that are used to stop or avoid continuous repetition of nouns in sentences. So when I say relative pronouns like relative adjectives are words that are used to describe, that are used to give or that give us more information about the subject. If you take away relative pronoun and relative adjective from a sentence, the sentence will still be meaningful. That's just the correct thing. And it's one of the things in language class they call it all these relative pronouns, relative adjectives, they call them parentheses. That when you take them off, the sentence itself will be meaningful. And the rule says that the verb that comes after who, which, that agrees with the noun before it. The verb that comes after who, which, that agrees before the nouns before it. Look at this sentence. The student who study hard will pass. The student who study hard will pass. The student is singular. The student with S is plural, who study. And the study there is in plural too. If it's going to be in singular position, it will be the student without an S who studies hard will pass. Can you relate with that? The verb after who, which, that, whose, when, whom, etc., etc., relative pronouns. The verbs after them, the subject after them, tells us if the verb after them is going to be plural or singular. And look at example 1 that I cited. The students who study hard will pass. Example 2, the book that is on the table. How many books is involved here? Just one. So we say the book that is on the table is mine. For clarity's sake, like I mentioned here, that more, in several occasions when you take away these, relative pronouns from sentences, it's still meaningful. We can simply say the student will pass. Let us remove the adjective. You can say the student will pass, or the student will study hard to pass. We can say the book on the table is mine. However, there is an exception that I want us to take a look into here. Look at this expression. You say one of those who, if you use one of those, who, it is what comes after, it is what comes before one of those that determines the verb it will take. So let us look at this sentence. You say she is one of those who came here. She is one of those who came here. Our concern here is who there is going back to those, not she. Who here is going back to those because it is simply mean to say that those who came here. That's the exception here. Because of time, let's just quickly rush through 1920 and call it today. Thank you for following or thank you for listening. Lastly, today I skipped one already. We don't have all the day. Lastly, today we have rule 20, the rule of title, book, country names, etc. When we have, however, long the string of words that are involved in title or book or country name or country names are, we give them singular verb afterwards. Name of books, countries, and organizations ending in s are treated as singular too. Things Fall Apart is a famous novel. Do not consider that the words that are involved in the titling of that book by Chinua Achebe is not one, is not is three. All the items or strings or words that are present in that titling are considered as one. The United Nations is meeting today. Do not give consideration to the impute of hairs after nations. it is still singular. And that is, I'm pretty sure that my colleague explained that last week. That is the area of what we call pluralia tantoms, where when has ends certain words, does certain words or certain words do or does not take them from, does or do not take them from being singular, like statistics, mathematics, moms, measles, logistics, etc. We're going to call it quit today here. I would have loved to make references to WAEC and NECO question years where some of these items were tested, because we don't have all the day. It's been a moment of enlightenment and knowledge this morning, and I really hope that this dissemination is clear and we are going to make perfect use of them in our construction, both speaking and written. Keep listening to Oxygen FM. Good morning, good afternoon, or good morning already. Thank you for listening. I love you.